Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. It has been a wild last 24 hours for the Michigan football program as they look to continue to hire their defensive coaching staff around Sherrone Moore, around Wink Martindale. And Friday morning, it sounds like they got their guy at the defensive backs coach as LaMar Morgan, former defensive coordinator for Louisiana, coming to Michigan to coach the defensive backs. And you got to give Sherrone Moore a ton of credit, right? He thought 24 hours ago, Sherrone Moore thought he had his defensive backs coach in Stephen Adegoke. Stephen Adegoke makes the last minute decision to stay in the NFL. And within 24 hours, Sherrone Moore pivots and goes and gets a very good candidate in LaMar Morgan coming over from Louisiana. We said this yesterday afternoon when the news came out that Adegoke was staying in the NFL. LaMar Morgan became the top prospect, their top target, you should say. If Jesse Minter endorses him, which Jesse Minter certainly does, having worked with him at Vanderbilt, I certainly am a fan of LaMar Morgan as well. I think this was a really good hire, but more importantly, a really good job by Sherrone Moore, who again is a first-year head coach, making a quick pivot and getting a defensive backs coach locked in heading into spring practice. Sherrone Moore, continues to do a really good job as a first-year head coach, and it's clear. Michigan is getting aggressive in hiring a staff around Sherrone Moore. You go out to the NFL and grab one of the more sought-after defensive coordinators in Wink Martindale. You go out to Tennessee and grab Brian Jean-Marie to make a lateral move from Tennessee to Michigan, getting in kind of a bidding war for Tennessee and landing your guy. And then you go out and land LaMar Morgan, who is a sitting defensive coordinator for Louisiana. Really nice job by the Michigan Wolverines. Really nice job by Sherrone Moore. I want to do two things. One, talk about LaMar Morgan. Talked about him a little last night, but kind of highlight some of the things. I went back last night, watched some Louisiana defense, absolute sicko hours, late night. Talk about what I saw. And then more importantly, we have some more news to talk about. And that is Keon Sabb hitting the transfer portal. Have that conversation about, one, how can you get Keon Sabb maybe to come back to Michigan? You guys know I'm a massive fan of Keon Sabb. But if he doesn't come back, what is this Michigan defensive backs room look like heading into that 2024 year? Before we get into it, just want to say thank you to you guys. It's been a wild last week, but it's been a blast. This is a program, many of you guys know I'm a huge Michigan fan. It's truly been extremely fun to talk ball with you guys in the comment section, cover this coaching staff search, the amount of support you guys have shown. That stuff means the absolute world to me. If y'all do enjoy the content, you enjoy the updates, consider subscribing to the channel. And more importantly, would love to hear what you guys are thinking in the comment section about LaMar Morgan, about Keon Sabb. We'll chop it up there. And without further ado, let's get into this one. I want to start with LaMar Morgan. And I went back last night. We hopped on early, talked about LaMar Morgan, kind of a surface level discussion about LaMar Morgan. I went back and watched some Louisiana defense last night just to get a feel of LaMar Morgan as a defensive coordinator. What are some of his philosophies? And within the first two games I watched, you can tell why Wink Martindale was a massive fan of LaMar Morgan. They see defense the same way. They want to put pressure on the quarterback. They want to load the box. They want to give a lot of different looks. Watching LaMar Morgan coach this Louisiana defense, you see a lot of loaded boxes. He is walking in safeties. He's walking in nickels, being around the box, disguising pressure, bringing a lot of pressure. That's what Wink Martindale wants to do. That's what we've had a ton of success with Mike McDonald and Jesse Minter. I think the largest success from this Michigan defense has come from the disguise that we've been able to have the last couple of years. Truly that NFL philosophy of really trying to put young quarterbacks at the college level, young offensive lines at the college level in conflict. Get them a little bit confused. Give them different looks. And a guy like LaMar Morgan he shares those similar ideas that Wink Martindale and Jesse Minter and Mike McDonald have. And so I'm a massive fan of that. You take a look at that Louisiana defense, they averaged almost 2 takeaways per game. That was top 12 in the country. They want to make game-changing plays. They want to leave their defensive backs on islands and let them go make plays. And you look at this Michigan defensive back room, you're comfortable with that, right? There are not a lot of programs that can say, yeah, we feel comfortable leaving our guys on islands and man coverage and letting them go make plays. Michigan has that defensive back room, right? Obviously headlined by Will Johnson, in my mind, the best cornerback in the country. You have a position battle going on the other side, but you feel comfortable at what they have in the back end. You got Rod Moore, Makari Page. I think LaMar Morgan and what he wants to do on defense fits exactly what the Michigan personnel has, and quite frankly, fits exactly what Wink Martindale wants to do. Fits exactly what Jesse Minter and Mike McDonald wanted to do in the past. So I think this is a really good hire. Another thing that I was kind of thinking while I was putting my notes together, I mean, Michigan now has 3 coaches on the defensive staff that have play calling and defensive coordinator background. Right, LaMar Morgan, obviously the sitting defensive coordinator for Louisiana. Wink Martindale, been a defensive coordinator at the NFL level for the last decade. And then you look at a guy like Brian Jean-Marie, who, I mean, you go in a bidding war for Tennessee, you land your guy, you kind of bully Tennessee out of their linebackers coach. But more importantly, I mean, Brian Jean-Marie has a lot of defensive coordinator experience going from his time at USF. He's been in the game a long time. The experience, the defensive coordinator and play calling experience for all 3 of these guys is evident. I think that's really exciting. You're kind of creating a brain trust, if you will, of guys that have designed their own defenses. And now we're going to come together and put an elite defense for Michigan out in 2024. I am excited about this hire. I think Sherrone Moore is getting extremely aggressive about going out and getting guys. Again, you bully Tennessee for your linebackers coach and Brian Jean-Marie. You go to the NFL and get Wink Martindale, a very sought-after defensive coordinator in the NFL landscape. And then you go to Louisiana and take their defensive coordinator. Now, I think the second conversation we want to have is Keon Sabb hitting the transfer portal. I want to pull up Michigan's depth chart really quick and just have the conversation about what this is going to look like for this Michigan program. And why did Keon Sabb hit the transfer portal? I think the idea is he doesn't know how much playing time he's going to get. And we all know, many of you guys know how big of a fan I am of Keon Sabb. I think he was going to make a massive jump for Michigan in 2024. The big question mark that we had when we broke down this Michigan defensive back room was, where's Keon Sabb going to play? Right? Rod Moore comes back. For my money, Rod Moore is the best safety in the country. And I know I just said that about Will Johnson. I don't think a lot of people are going to argue that about Rod Moore. Rod Moore, in his instincts at that safety position, is just next level. He's always in the right spot at the right time, making plays. He's an All-American safety. Then you have a guy like Makari Page, who clearly made that jump in 2023, played phenomenal football. So I think the question was, Keon Sabb, where does he fit into this puzzle piece? And we kind of kicked the idea of, okay, maybe Rod Moore moves down to that nickel spot and Keon Sabb plays the safety spot. Maybe Keon Sabb plays the nickel spot and you leave Rod Moore at that safety position. I think the big question was, how does Keon Sabb fit into this Michigan defensive back room? And I think that's why he hits the transfer portals. He's not really sure. And I think the first job for LaMar Morgan is looking at a guy like Keon Sabb, who can do so many different things. He can play in the box. He can be that free safety and say, hey, you are a talent. We are going to figure out a way to get you on the football field. Because let's put it frankly, I mean, Keon Sabb is starting on almost every single Power 5 program across the country. You've already seen the names that have emerged to be suitors for Keon Sabb: Oregon, Alabama. These are teams that are some of the best teams in the country. And Keon Sabb is probably a starter on all of those teams. So if you're Michigan, in my mind, you're calling Keon Sabb, you're getting him in a room and saying, hey, we have a plan for you to play a lot and be a contributor for this Michigan football program. Now, I think there's also that conversation of, okay, if Keon Sabb is not coming back, what does it look like? It's not the end of the world for Michigan. Let's get that straight. Keon Sabb's a phenomenal player. I'm probably the biggest Keon Sabb fan there is. But at the end of the day, you look at this Michigan defensive backs room, and you're not saying Keon Sabb is just an absolute – it hurts. It stings. There's no question about that. It doesn't crush this Michigan secondary room. You look at what it's going to look like now without Keon Sabb. You have Makari Page and Rod Moore in the back end of that defense playing the safety spot. That is, in my mind, one of, if not the best safety tandem that you have in the country. And then what does that nickel position look like? I think Jaden McBurrows is probably, from a physical trait standpoint, perfect to come in and kind of do exactly what Mikey Sandstrel did. You have, obviously, Will Johnson as one of your lockdown cornerbacks. You have a guy like Jair Hill that we're extremely excited about going into year 2. You feel pretty good because there are some guys that we're excited about that are coming up, right? A guy like Zeke Berry, you probably want to see him get on the football field. A guy like Brandon Hillman, another guy that you probably want to see get on the football field in 2024 as well. I think at the end of the day, you look at this Michigan defensive backs room. One, it's extremely deep. It's extremely talented, but more importantly, it has a lot of versatility. There are a lot of guys that can do a lot of different things. And I think Zeke Berry is one of those guys that he could play that safety role. He can play that nickel role. He can do a lot of different things for this Michigan defense. So not only is it really loaded, is it really talented, even without Keon Sabb, it's really versatile. You have a lot of guys that can do a lot of different things. So yes, does the Keon Sabb news hurt? Absolutely. Should LaMar Morgan's first job as a Michigan defensive backs coach be get Keon Sabb on the phone and say, hey, we're going to play you and we're going to figure out a way to get you on the field? It absolutely should be. But if Keon Sabb doesn't come back and he decides to go to another program where he's going to be a bona fide starter, no questions asked, you think Michigan in this defensive back room is going to be okay in my mind. Would love to hear your guys' input, your guys' takes in the comment section on that one. Wanted to hop on, tie a little bow on LaMar Morgan coming and being that defensive backs coach. Hopefully we're talking about Greg Scruggs later tonight as Michigan's defensive line coach. Appreciate you guys rocking with the fellas. Wanted to hop on, give you guys some of my thoughts and ideas. Again, can't thank you guys enough for all the support you guys have shown the boys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later.